This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, ready when you are.
Well, I declare this meeting of the City Council of the City of Escalon, regular meeting of July 20th, 2020. I declare it open. And before we begin, I do have a couple of introductory remarks. I would like to make it clear for the record that this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act waivers provided for under the Governor's executive order in response to the COVID-19 state of emergency. The agenda states how members of the public may observe and provide public comment. The agenda also states that the public may listen and provide comment telephonically by calling the number listed on the agenda. And for now, let's see, I don't see the picture of City Hall, so I'm going to have to go to Plan B with the Pledge of Allegiance and recite quietly along with me as I do the Pledge of Allegiance.
There you go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't know.
Thank you for indulging my little screw-ups there. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bellinger,
Here.
Councilmember Merkin,
Here.
Councilmember Legero,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Alves,
Here.
and Mayor Swift.
Here. And next we have a couple of presentations, and I think, Tam, I'm going to give these to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to take the time tonight to recognize our new Chief of Police, Robert Lackey, and congratulate him on his promotion and wish him the best. And I believe Mike Borges is on the line and had some words to say also.
That's correct. I'm on the line, and I do want to congratulate Rob on his new position within the city of Escalon, and I believe he'll do great things. And I'm hoping that in the future we'll be able to do a badge pinning. Yeah.
Well, Mike, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Chief.
Mm-hmm.
I did mute somebody wasn't muting their line, so I did mute a couple of lines.
Appreciate it very much.
But again, I just wanted to congratulate Lackey, who's been with the city for many years, starting in his career in the public works and making his way all the way to Chief of Police. I know the feeling of almost being overwhelmed when you step into a position like that. So I just ask that everybody be patient with him. I know he will do a great job, but may take a little bit of time to get it all underneath his feet there. And then the next recognition is for our police sergeant. Since Mr. Lackey was promoted to chief, it left a vacancy for our sergeant. So we did hold an internal recruitment, and I do want to congratulate Anthony Hargraves has been promoted to our sergeant. Again, another veteran with the department. I know that he will step in and fill those shoes just fine. And then Chief Lackey, if you have anything you would like to add, please feel free.
Yeah, with council's approval of the position I left open, and with the resignation of one of our officers, we backfilled with a couple new faces, and I'd like to welcome and congratulate Officer Halverson. I believe his first day was today, and I would like to also welcome and congratulate Officer Eder Cruz, who will be starting August 9th, I believe.
Okay, great. So that is the presentations, Mayor Swift.
Excuse me? That's outstanding news, Chief Lackey, and welcome aboard, as well as welcome aboard Sergeant Hargraves and Officers Halverson and Cruz. That's great news. Great news. Moving on to the consent calendar, these items are considered routine in nature and are acted upon by a single action unless requested by an individual council member or member of the public for a special consideration. For example, regarding item number 3, I will be abstaining from voting on check numbers 9, 7, 2, 3, 7, check number 7, 3, 6, 7, 7, and check number 7, 3, 7, 2, 4.
Could we have the agenda where we could see it while we're doing the meeting, please? Thank you.
And unless there are any other items that any council member or member of the public would like to pull for special consideration, I will ask for a motion to approve the balance of the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. I will proceed with a roll call vote. Councilmember Bellinger,
Aye.
Councilmember Legero,
Aye.
Councilmember Merkin,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Alves,
Aye.
and I will say aye as well. Consent calendar passes 5-0. Okay. Staff communications.
Mayor and Council, included in your agenda packet are the monthly reports for our treasurer's report, the police department, animal control, development services, building report, public works department, water department, wastewater, and also our citizen advisory committee quarterly report. Staff is available to answer any questions that any council member may have on those.
Again, I'll proceed to go around the table. Councilmember Bellinger, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Councilmember Legero,
No, thank you.
Councilmember Merkin,
I have nothing.
Mayor Pro Tem Alves.
I'm good.
Okay, and I have none as well at this time. Are there any other staff communications, Tammy?
I just have one other, or a couple other items. It does not look like we will have swim lessons this year. We are calling the swim lessons, but they will not happen this summer. So, and then with the CIF announcement today to postpone all of the sports until December, it is not looking like we will be able to have our soccer or flag football either. We'll still kind of hold out a couple more weeks to see where we end up. But with the delay in the CIF and combining so many high school sports at one time, we do have a fear that there's a chance that when it comes to the city's basketball season, that there may not be availability in the gyms because of the other sports that will be going on and the space that will be needed by the high school themselves. So we're just gonna have to kind of play that one by ear as we go this year too. So I just wanted to give some updates on those, but swim lessons have been called. We won't be having those this year. And then soccer, we'll give it another 2 or 3 weeks before we make that call.
Very good.
Tammy, I have a question.
Go ahead.
How many kids do we normally run through swim lessons each summer?
I am sorry, I do not know that off the top of my head. I want to say, I don't want to say.
Okay. All right.
Because
Yeah,
I honestly just can't answer
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I'm just curious what kind of numbers we're talking about, how they're going to be affected. You know, if there was any way to even break them into smaller groups and get the public health officer to sign off on any of that. You know, I'm sure we could find some kids to do the lifeguarding and the instructing, you know, but if there's any way to make that happen, I just really think that's kind of a Gary Haskin legacy too. that was always one of his big concerns, was to make sure that we had those swim lessons every summer, made sure these kids were drown proof. So if there's anything that we can do to make that happen, even if it's in small groups, that would be my preference. I know
Sure,
you-
and I mean, we've been holding out on that, and did have lifeguards standing by that were willing to do it. It's just, even with the small group numbers, we just haven't been able to get that permission, of course, from the county health officer to be able to move forward with lessons.
Yeah, I appreciate the efforts. I know it's ongoing, so thanks for that.
Mhm.
Jeff, I would echo exactly everything you've said, and I think it's critical at any cost that we can do without breaking the law, of course, to get that some way figured out for those kids. It is critical. And I know this whole thing is turning the world upside down, but at the same time, there's got to be some fudge room in here somewhere.
Tammy, how adamant is the county against swimming? It is an outdoor activity. I mean, how adamant do you feel they are, and what kind of wiggle room do we have, do you think?
What kind of what?
Legal room do we have with the county?
Well, they're still not allowing groups to come together like outside of a household. And I mean, I guess you could technically almost do like private lessons, but your costs are gonna, be a lot more to do that. I don't know what kind of wiggle room we have. I know I asked about a couple of weeks ago, and I was told that they're still not allowed. So, and since that time, our numbers and our hospitalizations have only grown.
Yeah, okay, well, I don't know. I mean, as for one, I'm highly skeptical that that's where our problem's actually at. But again, we've talked about that before. So, any other thoughts from the council on this issue? Just pipe in.
I think there's water parks. Are water parks open now?
I
I
don't
saw
know.
something the other day. It looked like they were open. My question would be, if they're open, how are they getting away with that?
I'm not sure that water parks are open, so I don't
Okay.
know how to answer that.
Well, I thought I saw something on the news, but I could be wrong.
Is there any desire? Go ahead.
There are some programs, different sport programs, that are able to participate, practice, and even have group practice, but they have real strict, controls over the number of kids, how much they interact and all that. And even those are even happening indoors in gyms. So, I really, whether we need to talk to some other jurisdictions and see what they're doing, or I would really want to see what the numbers are about trying to get even private lessons going, just because I think we have such an obligation to these kids to try and drown proof them and give them the lessons if we can make it happen. And if that requires some additional costs, so be it. But I think it's just critical to keep this moving forward if we can.
Yeah, Councilmember Legero, would you be desirous in us maybe seeking a consensus to pursue that private lesson or a model like that?
I think it'd be worth looking into.
Council members, what are your thoughts? Because maybe we'll just be looking for a consensus at this time to give a general direction.
I would echo the same sentiments.
Okay. So is this consensus then to direct staff maybe take a look at some of these private lesson options, and see what some of these other communities are doing to try to get something going to train these kiddos? Consensus?
Yes.
Councilmember
Yep.
Bellinger, Councilmember Merkin. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Tammy, maybe see what we can do for these kiddos.
Okay, but how do I determine who gets private lessons and who doesn't? I mean, obviously that means that's a lot less students that we're going to be able to serve. And
Right.
I don't have lifeguards that are currently trained. So, and we don't have supplies. So I'm at that window where in order to order things and get lifeguards trained, I'm going to impede into what is technically the start of the school year for the students.
Would it be advantageous, and I'm thinking about Councilmember Legero because you brought it up, would it be advantageous to either put something out on Facebook or on the police post or something like that to say, hey, listen, we're thinking about this. What are the thoughts of the community out there? What do you think about that, Councilmember Legero?
Well, but
Sure.
the problem again is that it's the timing to get things together. So even if I put that out there, am I going to have the ability to get it together to do this before the school year starts?
So seems like it's an issue about getting the lifeguards trained up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how long that would take. I don't know if it's a certification they have to redo every year, or if it's good for a certain amount of time. You know, coaches, you know, they certify every 12 months or so for club seasons and all. So is this something that would take a week to get them trained, 2 weeks to get them trained?
Well, the training is not that long, but when we looked into getting the supplies that would be needed to outfit the pool, we were looking at 7 to 10 days for those supplies.
What type of supplies for swim
Well,
lessons?
you have to have signage, you have to have all the social distancing, you have to have the hand sanitizer, extra PPE for the lifeguards, you have to have a special pack first aid kit for resuscitation.
So I guess that's going to be depend on if the county health office says that if we're doing private lessons, how that's going to impact all of that. And if we need to order those, and if we need to order those supplies, and and those supplies can be used elsewhere in the community, I think that's fine. But I would just move forward with getting the training. I don't think the cost is that astronomical. I'd rather have it in place, and if we can get a handful of kids on a first come, first serve basis through there. You know, if it's a half-hour lesson or an hour lesson, you can run a few kids through there with 2 or 3 instructors. So I'm just, you know, and again, I know I'm kind of springing this on you as far as the numbers of kids involved and all that kind of stuff, but since we're at that point where we're going to have to make a decision here, I would rather, you know, do what we can to push it forward, even if it's truncated, it's a short, you know, series of lessons or whatever. But I think anything is going to be better than nothing at all.
Councilmember Legero, or I'll throw this out to everybody. Do you know somebody in the community that is well versed in swim lessons that can maybe help spearhead this effort? Because I don't know if this is necessarily in Tammy's wheelhouse. I'll check Tammy, and we'll probably really help me. Sorry?
In regards to which are you referring to? What?
Organizing a program like this. I mean, is this something that you can do, or can you assign it to somebody on staff? Or
Well, yeah, it would be assigned to the recreation coordinator.
I guess my question is, how do we have private lessons at our public pool and the city is doing all the work to put it together? It kind of takes away the private part to me.
I think it's not so much private as much as it's maybe one-on-one,
Small group.
you know, just to get the kids through there. So I don't know. It's something I think it's important to try and do if there's any way to do it. And seeing that some of these other programs are able to practice and find a way around it. You know, we're talking about swimming lessons, not swim team and that type of thing. So that's just my concern, is trying to make that happen.
Well, my best guess would be you have to make a reservation for appointments like you do for a haircut. You know, okay, you're here for half an hour, here for half an hour, and do it like individually.
Right. It means less kids that are going to get in for lessons. And again, we'll have to reach back out to see if there's still lifeguards available. We'll have to do some homework to see if we can do the private lessons, if we have the lifeguards available, the availability of supplies and training.
And since time is of the essence of this, and I know you got a lot to play, but do you mind maybe just keeping us updated, between now and the next council meeting as to how it's progressing?
Okay.
Robert, I hate to say it, but if we don't have anything between now and the next council meeting, it's not going to happen. It starts on the 12th of August. That's 3.5 weeks.
But what I'm saying, that's why it's got to happen between now and the next council meeting. And so the only way for us to be updated is if we get the updates.
Yeah.
I don't want to wait until the next council meeting to get the update.
Yeah.
But even if this is clearly not the traditional way that things are done, and the summer is usually set aside for this kind of stuff. But if it's something that happens on the weekend too, or even after school program, I think if that's what's available out there and we can make it happen, we might as well do what we can. Everything else is getting canceled. So, if there's a way to make this work, even if it goes into the school year, if it goes, it's going to be hot out there for a long time. These kids that need these lessons, I'm sure we can make it work after school program or weekend or whatever. So
my worry if it goes into the school year is our lifeguards are typically of college age.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know where they'll be in their schooling.
They're likely online.
They're all online right now, probably.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely, I know my daughter's age group, they're all looking for things to do and keep busy. And a lot of them are qualified or could be qualified. So, it's certainly, if it's possible, it just seems like we can make it work. We're just gonna have to modify some things. But if we can get the green light for it, let's see what we can do.
Okay. So it would have to be, just so we're clear, it has to be lifeguards that are already certified, because the training is not out there for certification, but they still would need to be trained in the lessons, what they need to do for the lessons themselves. When I say training for, before they can do the lessons. But we did have a group of them, 5, I believe, that had certifications that could do lifeguarding.
Okay. Well, that's 5 that we can keep pretty busy. So if we can make it, if we can get the go ahead, let's get those 5 on board if we can. If not, we can start training others. And if it's going to be an extended, season of swim lessons, then we can get other people up to speed, and keep this going for as long as we can.
That's the problem, though. The training is not even being offered to get certified at this time.
Okay. Yeah, that would be another problem. So.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this, on our consensus before we move on to matters presented from the audience? No? Okay, matters presented from the audience. This time, the public may address the city council on any item not on the agenda that is within the authority of the council. Speakers are limited to a maximum of 5 minutes, and we take speakers both via the phone as well as speakers who are in this go-to-meeting session. Let's go with anybody who would like to speak that is involved in the go-to-meeting session first. Anybody? Okay, let's go to phone speakers, people who have called in on the phone. And here's your opportunity to say your piece. Okay. Seeing none, we will go to public hearings. We do have 2 public hearings tonight, and we'll start with item number 9. And Tammy, I think I'll give this to you, or is this for Dominique?
Dominique.
Yes, thank you. And everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. So item is consideration of the Planning Commission's recommendation to amend ordinance number 565 regarding Lear Village Plan Development, which is our PD1, adjusting the lot size and coverages charts and modifying the condition of approval for storage requirements. So in the background, we summarize the project, which I know a lot of us are familiar with, that the developer entered into a purchase contract with the city back in 2015 to purchase the old police department and the city hall lots, along with a vacant residence in downtown Escalon. The project went through staff and planning commission review in February of 2018, and then the city adopted Ordinance 565, which amended the zoning map and approved the planned development PD1 Lear Village. Lear Village's approved design included 8 residences, a commercial office, a storage building, and all associated landscape, common areas, and parking lots. Through the process of building plan, set review, civil site plan review, construction of civil plan improvements, the HOA and CC&R reviews, final map review and approval, and finalizing the logistical details of this project, the developer advised that the project was infeasible with the storage requirement condition applied to it. The developer was advised by staff to apply for an ordinance amendment requesting to modify the lot size and coverage chart, as well as the condition of approval for storage. This ordinance amendment application was heard at the June 16th Planning Commission meeting. An in-depth review of the developer's request of modifications is listed in the Planning Commission staff report with exhibits that we did attach to this staff report. Also included are the minutes from that Planning Commission meeting, which were approved on July 14th. After much discussion at the Planning Commission meeting, the recommendation of the Planning Commission was to 1, make the findings per section 65860A of the Government Code. 2, amend Ordinance 565 to update Section 4 standards, paragraph 6, lot sizes and coverages as shown in the attached draft ordinance. Number 3, update Section 4 standards, paragraph 3, conditions of approval, condition number 21, storage, to allow for A, the requested modification to the use, floor plan, and elevation of Building D to be general warehouse / storage building owned and utilized by the commercial business on Main Street. B, that the building cannot be used for living quarters and cannot be leased or utilized by any person or business that is not Lear Village owner / tenant. C, the construction of attic storage in the residences is optional at the discretion of the developer. D, the developer has the ability to limit materials and items to be stored within Building D. E, owner of Building D may charge market rate for the overflow secured storage units within Building D. And F, initial Lear Village residents have the first right of refusal for overflow secured storage within Building D. Subsequent owners and tenants have the option to obtain overflow secured storage, which must be accommodated within 30 days of request. The City Council may accept and take action on the Planning Commission's recommendation above, or choose a different option if it is determined the best fit for the planned development and surrounding community. Other options discussed at the Planning Commission and in the Community Development Department include: 1, that the 8 residences within Lear Village do not need secured storage, so the storage requirement can be removed altogether. 2, allow attic storage as proposed by the developer or modified as agreed upon by the council and/or developer. 3, allowed secured storage to be accomplished through the use of small sheds in private yards. For the 2 units, the sheds do not fit in the yard. This option would involve either waiving the storage requirement or requiring an alternative storage method. This option was explored by staff previously, but it was not able to work for all 8 of the units as disclosed earlier. So 2 of them had issues with fitting small sheds in the yard due to small lot sizes and utility locations. But it doesn't mean it still can't be an option with some modification if the council chooses to do so. 4, provide storage lockers in the carports. This option was brought up by the Planning Commission, and staff would have a concern with the lack of adequate space to provide this option due to the sizing of the parking lot and the spaces. We're not absolutely sure it would fit or leave enough room for actual vehicles to park in there, but it could be explored definitely. Number 5, allow the requested modification to the use and elevation of Building D to be a general warehouse storage building owned and utilized by the commercial business on Main Street. However, modify the proposed floor plan to include a separate and independently accessed area of the building for residential secured storage that could either be included in the HOA or rented at market rate. Number 6, require Building D's use, floor plan, and elevation to remain as originally approved as individual secured storage units required for the residences and commercial business in Lear Village. Number 7, require Building D's use, floor plan, and elevation to remain as originally approved as individual secured storage units for the residences and commercial business in Lear Village. However, remove the requirement of storage and allow the units to be rented out at market rate. And then number 8 is any other option or condition set forth by the City Council. So these were just other options and ideas that staff wanted to put out there to make sure that, everybody's familiar with some options and have some discussion points if needed. And we can discuss any of those as well. So therefore, staff recommends City Council consider Planning Commission's recommendation to amend Ordinance 565, which would adjust the lot size and coverages chart, modify the conditions of approval for storage requirements by holding the public hearing and then waiving the first reading and introduction of the ordinance. And if you have any questions, I'm here, and I am not sure, Mr. Lear, David Lear, are you on the line?
Okay.
So if you have any questions, I or Tammy could answer those.
I have a few.
Sure.
Robert, may I go?
Oh, please, go ahead. Yeah, what I'd like to do, by the way, council members, I'd like to go and get any initial questions from the council members first, then we'll open up the public hearing, okay?
One of the concerns I have, actually one of many, but in particular, the time on this project has been stretched out, drug out, just extended beyond any comprehension that I can appreciate. My question to you is, based on all that, the rules or the agreement we had with the applicant would have changed somewhat in terms of the actual permit costs and stuff based on the time delays. Now, my understanding was initially he was going to be charged for the year 2019 or 18. Is that correct?
So the original purchase contract has estimates on permit fees from 2015, I believe, possibly 2014, but I'm believing it's 15. And as you are aware, when we do fee studies, we typically have an escalator that goes into effect every July 1st of every year. So they do increase between 2.5% to 5% annually. And so the fees for the project, or the buildings, I should say, because we attach a building permit per building, and each building pays their development impact fees, have increased annually since then. They increased up to October 2017, where his map was vested. And at the time of vesting, the Subdivision Map Act requires us to freeze those rates. So he is currently being assessed for fees at the rates during October of 2017 when the map was submitted.
Okay, so we're in 2023 years later, and going to be 4 years real soon here. All right, now, if we do decide to finalize this man's map, then at what point does his time start to pull his permit to make those fees stay in place? And if he doesn't pull the permit within a certain period of time, do those fees change?
So the final map was finalized. He had finalized it on June 25th. So the map is completed. When he turned in his tentative map back in October of 2017, that's when the fees were vested. So the map has been finalized. And I don't believe, maybe Ann or Mark can help me out, but I don't believe there's an expiration on a final map once it's finalized.
No, there's not.
Well, my question is, the fees that he is currently owing the city
Mm-hmm.
are due before we can move forward.
They're due in order for him to get his building permit.
Okay. All right. I got it. Now, my other concerns. Are you guys getting feedback?
A little bit, yes.
It's like it's echoing here.
Yeah, I don't hear an echo.
Okay, we're good. My next question. The storage issue. I think it's critical that storage is for.
Uh-oh, you're breaking up.
We're breaking up.
Yeah, I heard storage is critical and then nothing after that.
My question is, I guess, how can we accept the lack of storage on these units, knowing that it's going to create a burden on the new homeowner who will be in a position to clutter and overburden their yards with storage, which in turn will not add to the neighborhood desirability.
Uh-huh. Well, so there's a whole list of things that you can do here. And number one is you could decide that there's no secured storage necessary, but that's only one of many. I mean, I don't think anybody's recommending that Lear not have to provide storage. It's just where and how. Or
Have
you can
we defined that? And have we defined that?
Well, yes, there's that list. There's a whole bunch of options on page 2. I hope I'm answering your question, but on page 2 of your staff report, at the bottom.
I've read the list.
Yeah, so you can either just require that it stay the same, the original condition, just stay the way it is, or he's asking to be allowed to provide storage instead, in building D or as attics or storage sheds, all these other options. You don't have to choose any of those.
My personal feeling is that he needs to provide adequate storage, and that will prevent the clutter and the undesirable look that the neighborhood's going to have to deal with.
Yeah, but how?
The building he's building.
Okay, so in other words, your preference would be to just leave the condition as is.
If the condition as is, I understand. The new building adjacent to the old city hall will become storage for those units.
Okay, that would be option number 6.
Right.
On page 3.
That was.
I would recommend that the council look at that very closely.
So Dominique, is option 7 is exactly the same as item 6, except that the units could be would have to be paid for by the businesses and the residents. Is that right?
He is suggesting at a fair market value, Ann.
Correct.
Right.
The issue that's been explained to us is that the deed restriction on the storage requirement that is located in the HOA and CC&R documents is not making the project an investment. It's making it an expense that he can't cover in the project. And so removing that requirement from his documents and allowing him to either lease it back to other people at the market rate
Mhm.
will help him move forward with the project.
Okay, so yeah. So under option 7 would be still the storage units would only be available to the residents and businesses, but those residents and businesses would have to rent them at market rate, right?
Correct. He wants to be able to have that ability to lease it back to them, but not be required to provide it to them if they don't want it, where originally it was given to them as a part of the project, whether they wanted it or not.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, good.
For me, that is a symptom of a substandard development.
So, Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Al, open it up to the public hearing, please. Public hearing has begun. Anybody ask questions?
I have a quick question here, Robert. As it's written in section 3 from the Commission, their recommendation that they make the attic storage optional and storage.
So there is a very fast. Get what you were saying, Dave. I don't know if everybody can turn down the volume, maybe of what they're listening to. It's like it's echoing back, picking it back up. I don't know if somebody's on a computer and a phone.
Maybe the computer.
Try
it now.
That talk again.
Sounds a lot better already. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay,
fault. I
sorry,
had another laptop here. My fault.
So as under section 3, as it's written, I have an issue with that the attic storage is not going to happen because it's at the option of the developer. So that means it's probably not going to happen. If it's optional, they're not going to do it if they're already concerned with their project budget. And that's why they're here, is because they didn't plan their budget appropriately to be able to make it happen as originally planned. Market rate concerns me with the tenants. Some may or may not want storage, but I have a little bit of a concern with market rate for overflow storage within the building. I'm kind of with Mayor Pro Tem Alves on here with, I would want to see that, I'm leaning towards option 7 myself, with making sure that the building's built as it's supposed to be built. I still have an issue with, what's the problem with originally how it was planned with no change? What is the financial impact to the residents or this project differentiating that?
So in summary, it sounds like it's not being appraised as an investment. It's being appraised as an expense, and so it sounds like it's affecting his ability. That building's affecting his ability to be able to get a loan on it. And then in it also, because it's written into the deed restriction and the CC&Rs of the development, it increases the pricing or the monthly fee for the HOA fee for the people who will live in that development, over $300 a month.
Without the storage, what would be the HOAs, and with the storage, what would it be?
We don't have exact numbers, but at the Planning Commission meeting, Mr. Lear had indicated that the HOA fee at that time, and this is how I interpreted it, it might not be how he meant it, was around $272, and that including the storage, the monthly storage fees into that HOA fee would bring it over $300 a month.
How much more though? And how much is he going to charge us? What's a market rate amount for the storage that he wants to charge, as opposed to including it in an HOA?
Yeah.
So if you make it so it's a they can rent it out at market rate, is that going to cost those residents more than if it's rolled up in the HOA?
Yeah, and I'm not absolutely sure. That's definitely something we can ask him to provide to us if
I'm not sure
possible.
what market rate storage is and how much actual storage are we looking at providing to these residents in that building at this point versus other areas for that same amount of storage.
Okay.
It's just a question how much, if it's going to cost more or less for the tenants.
Okay. His main issue is him having to provide it in the deed restriction, and so it's holding up him being able to pull the loan on the project. So he can't get the funding to move forward with the project with the deed restriction and the CCNRs how it's written.
Yeah, I was going to say, Councilmember Bellinger too, and this might, going back to one of Mayor Pro Tem Al's points, I think that's a concern that these tenants, we want to make sure it's a nice, clean development, quality development. I'm sure he does, Mr. Lear does too, of course. So what do you do to ensure that there isn't a lot of clutter out there? And then there's not a lot of, just junk things. Where are they going to put everything at? And so my only concern with 7 at market rate is that if they have a choice, they may not choose to take advantage of that storage. And that's why I think number 6 was originally the plan, and it was put in for that reason, because it helped ensure that this was going to be the kind of quality development that we all wanted.
I'm concerned about the developer being able to not secure funds for the project for this one building out of all of the buildings. This is putting this whole project in jeopardy. That concerns me with the financial viability of his company to be able to do the project.
I can understand that concern. Is there any comment from the public? The public hearing still is in session. Okay. Well, I'm hesitant to close the public hearing because I know this is going to be an open topic. So let's just let's go around the room. Any other council members, starting with Councilmember Legero, what are your thoughts at this point?
I agree with comments that Councilmember Bellinger has made, the concerns about the project and all, but I'm tending to lean towards option 6 as is, but sounds like maybe we need some more information from the builder.
Yeah, Tammy, is my understanding that hopefully you will be available tonight?
We anticipated them to be on the line. I don't see anything that tells me that he has called in.
All right, Councilmember Merkel, what are your thoughts at this point?
Well, I get to understand what these people are going to be storing. None of the apartment complexes have storage. Baker Street, the Willow Heights, none of those provide storage. You have to go to the place.
They can't hear you?
Can you hear us? Hello?
We can now.
Okay, well, that's okay.
And
I'm
who is
sorry,
it?
I just was panicking because nobody could hear us, and so I'll be happy to wait for the end of the council discussion.
Okay, well, again, we're still in the public hearing, and we're just getting some thoughts from the other council members, and we're with Councilmember Merkin right now. Councilmember Merkin, please continue.
Well, like I said, none of the apartment complexes here in town provide storage. We have a storage facility to put stuff in. So I don't know what we're anticipating that these people are going to store out there that is going to be a blight any more than any of the other apartment complexes.
Now, on the phone, can you please identify yourself?
Yes, my name is George Petrolakis. I'm an attorney for Mr. Lear.
Mhm. Okay, all right, Mr. Petrolakis, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think that there were a couple of council members that actually were swerving towards some information that they would need from either you or Mr. Lear. Councilmember Legero, Councilmember Bellinger, you had a couple of questions that we were hoping that maybe they might be able to answer.
I can start, I guess. In regards to the HOAs, it's been expressed from the Planning Commission side. Dominic was saying that if we don't have the storage included in the HOAs, you're about $272 a month. And the comment was made if you had storage and that building was included for the HOAs, it would be over 300. Do you have a little bit more narrowing of that? And then secondarily, they talk about market rate for the storage that you're going to charge those residents. Can you give us an idea of currently what you think that might be?
I'm going to start. Mr. Lear's told me it'll be $47 extra a month in the HOA for maintenance only, and he can speak to the market rate issue.
Okay, so the detriment or the value, the bad value to that storage building kind of came later in the game. I didn't know initially at conception that there was a storage requirement at all. Actually, I didn't even know that. So when I had presented the project at its inception, I just wasn't aware of the storage requirement. So when we went through Planning Commission, the storage building was in phase 2. And it was approved in phase 2, then it was moved in phase 1 before council. So it was a last minute thing. I wasn't aware of its impact or how it would exactly impact the project, but I had not proposed it be built in phase 1 initially. And so when it got moved to phase 1 and I was told at that time that it was a requirement for the project, I just thought, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to address it right now. But initially, because I've done lease agreements with cities actually as well and other people as requirements for parking when we've done commercial office renovations, I figured, well, maybe I can do the lease back to the HOA in the same manner that I've done those commercial lease agreements for parking when it's been required and we didn't have it on site. So, but I wasn't sure how bad it would get. So as we went through the process, the conditions of approval, the building was deed restricted. Some of the things that came because of this requirement and some of the restrictions on the storage building itself, it became an infrastructure cost to the project and no longer an investment property at all. So had I known that, I would have never parceled that building separately. It's just something I wouldn't have done. It's just something not any developer would have done. It was always parceled separately as an investment property to produce income separately from the residences and the commercial building office space itself. Because of the deed restrictions, I have to finance the commercial office space together with the storage building. So somebody has to maintain that separately now anyways. It was never intended to be an infrastructure cost. And I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but your architectural relief guidelines, according to our designer at the time, are equivalent to that of the city of San Jose. So that is a Taj Mahal storage building. I probably wouldn't have done it with that approach as Sacramento with that way. There's lots of people, they do renovations like this. You don't have to build it that way. That's fine. That's your code. It's how it's designed. It looks very nice. But I had not designed it intention of it being an infrastructure cost, much like you would look at water or sewer or electrical or any of that. I had not intended it to be that ever. It was always an investment property. So going back to its original intention and design, being that it's a requirement under this quote-unquote multifamily requirement, the borrowing power of the buyer is impacted by approximately $10,000 per unit. That's because my townhouses are maxed because they're moderate income housing. So I'm maxed at comp, right? So those units are only going to appraise for so much based upon comparable property values in downtown Escalon. I'm capped at it. So I can't just go in and like in the city of San Francisco, you charge another $15,000 or $20,000 and kind of minimize the parking spot. I can't do that in this project. I can't do that separately like that. We're capped on values. This is modern income housing. So we're trying to solve a housing problem really here in the Valley. This is a proof of concept project. So it impacts the borrowing power of each buyer by $10,000. In addition to The appraiser said he can attribute zero value in the appraisal because there's a maintenance cost associated with that storage building of $47 each. So there's no value. So that means I can't cover the cost. It's now an infrastructure cost for that building of around 165, and then another 80,000 in the borrowing. It's actually more than 165. It costs more than that. This whole project costs more. I mean, there's other areas too here where the scope of work has increased substantially. But anyway, so I said around 300,000. That's probably a good number with carrying costs. Probably 265 to 300,000 conservatively is the cost of that building as an infrastructure cost to be required to provide that as a quote unquote storage requirement under a multifamily guideline when the entire development is built for single family. I've had a hard time accepting that anyways, but I think we found a solution with the Planning Commission that makes sense for all parties involved. And if it's the intent of the council to absolutely require storage and for us to meet both multifamily and single family as far as both site and building codes goes, and it have to be both of those requirements, we have provided design on each of the 8 units insofar as attic space storage goes. In addition to that, I like the idea. I think it's great for the community to have overflow storage. The first right makes sense. We've managed a lot of commercial office space. There's a way to make that work for all parties involved. That's why I like the Planning Commission's recommendation. Had this not been moderate income housing, or maybe had I better understood this quote unquote requirement at the conception of, or the inception of this project, we may have not moved forward at all, because the margins in moderate income housing, I don't know if you guys talk to other people, they're deplorable. I mean, this might as well be a not-for-profit. I mean, you want to do 40, not 8. So I think it's going to be an absolute benefit to the city of Escalon, to be honest with you. I think this is a very nice project, but I'm not sure that the complexities and the scope of work that has been involved is really, really very well understood, which I can understand why it might not be. But every consultant, anybody who's working on this project says it's by far the most complicated project they've ever done. It's 10 plus complicated. Not anybody in the valley I am aware of has done a mixed-use development like this in at least 20 years or more. This is a very, very, very tough project. We know what we're doing, but it's very tough, and there's a lot that needs to be explained.
And let me add on, this is George again, let me add just on the basic concern that we started with on a clutter in the yard. That's going to be addressed in the CCNRs for the project, and there's not going to be able to be clutter in the yard. Obviously, to get to a place probably where the council's comfortable is difficult to do at a hearing like this, right? It's especially difficult to do over the phone at a hearing like this, for the virus reason. But I think that I think it's not too hard to get there, and the problem can be solved so that there's no clutter and so that there's adequate storage for the units, which is my understanding, the primary concerns I heard from the council. I think you heard also, I heard some concern about the financial viability. In this case, the problem is, as Mr. Lear explained, because of the nature of the storage concept currently, the appraiser can't add any value in it. So it's really just a construction loan issue. It doesn't have to do with anything else. And that's why we're seeking alternatives.
Sure. David, Mr. Petrolakis, now with that, it doesn't add any value. Would it add value if they were rented at market rate, the storage units?
Well, I had proposed actually about a year and a half ago to staff. I said, why don't we just lease these at market rate to the tenants at their discretion? And in fact, I mean, to your point, to all of your points, if somebody's yard is getting cluttered, well, we have an option for you. You can lease that at market rate, and if you don't fix your issue, it's already addressed in the CCNRs. You can be forced to, maybe have storage. Either that, or you're going to get a lien on your property. That's how those HOAs are managed. I'm not sure. Again,
is it under CCNR or under HOAs?
It's CCNR. So the HOA is just an association that manages it. Now there is some language in the HOAs that addresses some of these things, but the CCNRs are are very, very clear. They are very good. So the way that this project is designed is that in 100 years, this is going to be aesthetically, from an aesthetic standpoint, it's always going to look nice. I mean, it's never going to not look nice ever. I mean, that's the approach to this project. It's Escalon's Main Street. I mean, it's designed this way for a reason. I mean, I don't mean that like in a rude way. I'm just saying, like, you know, we're putting our name on this thing. And if you're familiar with any of the projects we've done, they all look nice. But when we sell those buildings, you can get a landlord to come in there and not maintain it anymore like the way that we like to maintain it. So the CCRs are drafted in a way that there's no way ever that you have this problem with aesthetics in the way that maybe is maybe the concern. And then some, actually. So the CCRs are around 120 pages. They're very specific, and they're really, really good.
What I'm wondering about is if you were able to say to the lender or to the appraiser, listen, these are storage units that we are renting out at market rate. Yes, the tenants have first right to a refusal, but we're renting these out at market rates. I'm just wondering if that helps your situation financially, not only with the loan, but also with appraisal and everything else.
Yeah, the way that the Planning Commission has approved it, it works. So the reason I asked for general warehouse was to increase the viability of the building. It was just building viability. Because you have all up and down Main Street, smaller storage units with offices. I actually think that's a really good fit in the city of Escalon. This is going to be a much nicer version of that. I mean, let me tell you, this is going to be the Del Rio of storage buildings in the city of Escalon. So, in fact, the whole freaking block's going to look like that. What's that?
What's your market rate for the tenants for that storage?
Well, right now it's negotiable. It's more or less based upon need, because what we went to was a secured fenced storage. So the size of which we're going to maybe have one or two sizes. I like that. It's, when I've done other redevelopment stuff, we've done actually fence gated storage as opposed to a storage building. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever heard of anybody building a storage building separately for storage, actually ever, probably because it doesn't pencil. But we have had, like let's say a basement where you've got a lot of dead space, and then you provide gated storage, fenced storage. Sometimes you can put the mesh on it, sometimes not. So the idea is to make more or less these box kind of cubicles that are more or less freestanding, so it's based upon need. It's more free market, but it does give the tenant.
You've got it penciled out, and you haven't told anybody how much you think you're going to charge a resident for any size. I'm just trying to get an idea. Market rate
I don't know, probably $50 to $100. I guess it's a 1,200 square foot building, and it's going to cost probably $185,000 altogether to build. And so if you're taking up 100 square feet of that, it just needs to cover the cost of maintaining the building. And, there's not going to be much profit in it, I can tell you that. So you're asking me what fair market rate is on storage?
Right. I'm just trying to figure out what you're going to charge. We have a rough idea without storage what your HOAs are tentatively looking at. They're about $270. If one of the tenants would like to have some storage, I'm just asking roughly what that would cost them.
$50 to $100 based on the size. Maybe $80, $85 for a 7 or 6x6 or something, 6x7. It's tall ceilings in there too. So between $50 and $100 is my assumption on market rate. I mean, I know it's a little bit of it's not traditional, I guess you could say, but it'll be right in that range. I mean, it's going to be nice storage.
David, you might be allowed to ask this, but also possibly Dominique. What is the difference between what the Planning Commission is recommending and item number 7 with the additional options that we're looking at?
So let's see here.
I'm looking at both, and I'm trying to figure out what the difference is.
So on item 7, what the Planning Commission recommended was the ability to offer to the occupants of the individual units the right to rent one of these storage cages of sort inside the building D, which would be a warehouse storage building. And 7,
I'm not seeing the difference.
7's not, yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not that much different from 7.
Yeah, I think it's essentially the same thing, isn't it, Dominique? It's just that the planning commission's recommendation has some other details added to that.
Correct. The planning commission has a couple of additional items.
For example, that it can't be used for living quarters.
And that will be worked into that as well. Or we can specify that as well. It's just basically that the attic storage is optional. He has specific abilities to limit the types of items that people would bring in to be stored in that building.
Right.
They're just more specific.
Yeah, it's basically number 7.
So
And
no,
the
actually, number 7 says to put as individual storage units.
Wait, what? Sorry.
Number 7 actually says to use the original floor plan, but then they would be rented at the market value or the market rate.
So it doesn't have item A, which is the requested modification of building D.
Correct. So the difference between that and it wouldn't be tied to the homeowners association.
So, I mean, the reason I bring all this up is because I know that total council members, we like the notion of item 6, but also, I'm wondering if we could live with item 7, and I'll tell you why. Because close to what the
Mayor, can we check their volume again? Go back.
What was that, Tammy?
Having everybody check their volumes, turn them down if they need to, because there's the echo again.
Yeah.
It's not me. Turned everything off.
I think we're good now.
What I was saying is that if a couple of council members like option number 6, and there's not a lot of difference between 6 and 7, and if 7 is dangerously close to the option that both the planning commission and Mr. Lear feel that he can actually move forward with the project, we might just want to go ahead and go with the planning commission's recommendations once you take a look at everything.
Well, I don't have my agenda because I can't do it at the computer and stuff. But I'd like to either read them or show me both those options one more time.
So what the planning commission approved was his proposed this open storage building.
Okay.
Building wouldn't be sectioned off, and tenants would have the right to rent this cage type storage within that building.
I see.
And then on item 7, it would be that the building would stay as originally proposed, which is sectioned off with storage units, but it would be rented out to the tenants at the market rate and not part of the homeowners association dues.
So it'd be an additional cost of anywhere from $50 to $100.
Correct. Which is the same way that the planning commission had recommended that.
What's the difference? The one had the cages there. Are these actual walls that you're showing on this drawing right now on the screen?
Yeah, the drawing that's on the screen is the original proposed building that had all of the individual units. It's not an open building.
Okay.
Are the walls drywall, Tammy, like most storage places?
I'm sure we don't get into details of the construction of it, just the concept.
Yeah, those could be cages, just like you showed earlier, as well as it could be. I mean, I'm just curious how he's dealing with that.
These, I don't believe, were meant to be the cages. The cages came about when he was proposing to do an open floor plan with
Yeah.
no walls within there, with the exception of a bathroom.
Yeah, I'm less concerned about the interior of that building being walled or caged. What's the difference in elevation that's mentioned in item A of the Planning Commission's recommendation?
So item A of their recommendation is the modification, which is what's here on the screen.
But it mentions modification of use, floor plan, and elevation.
The elevation would be the addition of a rolling door. There's a roll-up door.
As opposed to what?
Originally, a roll-up door was not a part of the development. Or the building, I should say.
Well, that, oh,
And then, of course, there's the addition of the bathroom.
We're back to the feedback. Somebody's got a cell phone, turn it off.
Hey, Dominique, this is Mark Velasquez. Attic storage, how much storage is actually be available if I went with attic storage?
I'm sorry, I couldn't make out what you were saying.
Attic storage?
Yes.
What is proposed for the space for that?
They're included in the planning commission. They're different for each of them, the dimensions. Let me find the page number for that. It is. Escape. Page 3 of 7 of the Planning Commission staff report. Near the bottom. It lists it by the unit, storage height, width, depth, and then total cubic feet.
Now, if we go with the recommendations of the Planning Commission, the attic storage is an option for the developer.
Correct.
Yes.
I have a question. I think, Dominic, I've asked you this in the past, and I don't know if we've ever got clarification on this, but by penetrating that ceiling, I believe you violate the fire code. Is that still true or not?
I had spoken to our building official at the time, and they did not indicate a fire concern. They did indicate that the building that does not have the ladders as an option, or there's two buildings that don't have ladders included, and that's because the roof was existing, and in order for him to put that a ladder in, he would have to redo the roofing, which is our existing building, and at this time he doesn't intend to redo that roofing
You mean
setup the way it is
ceiling or roof? Which is it?
excuse me, sorry, the ceilings.
Very good. Because he has T-bars in some of them. Is that the idea?
Similar, yes.
They're suspended ceilings.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, you can't support any weight in those. That's the problem.
Hey, Al, just real quick, or I'm sorry, Ed, sorry. No, you can't do go hard load suspended ceiling and put weight on it. So no, those are all stick frame. And on building B, it's not only a low ceiling, but because of the new parapet that we're running around the back of that building, I don't know if you looked at the structural plans, but we've got to go 45. I think it's 18 on center, angle brace, all around that roof. So, you know, that's a little bit more going on there. I mean, probably would have to get in the roof and maybe more. But I mean, the stick frame, you know, in those master bedrooms is essentially what we're doing. I think I explained this to you that, we got a stick frame in the master bath on building A anyways because of the water heater, which had to be gas for Tower 24. You know, we're down an 8-foot ceiling in those master baths. Now we've got, I think, 12.4 at the ceiling height. We got a little bit of room, but I wanted to stay at 9-foot ceilings in those bedrooms. It just feels better. It's all 10 foot to the kitchen, living. It looks very nice. And go down to a 9 in the hallway into the bedrooms. And the only place we dropped to an 8 was over the master bath. And the reason for that was the water heater. So we would go ahead and stick frame over those master bedrooms. It's the only way to do it. I mean, you're familiar with that.
What I'm wondering about.
But we'd have to go, we'd probably have to go with a, like a 2x6. What do you think? 2x6, 2x8? I don't know, probably 2x6, 2x8, floor joist. So it gets a little tight, but it gets a little tight, but I mean, there's room. I mean, I think you're probably right. People are going to want additional storage. And of course it is modern, it's going to be very nice modern income housing, but you're probably going to get more than what you pay for, to be honest with you. But you're probably right. And if it's, pushing stuff back there, I mean, those ceilings are 12.4, so we go hard lit. We get our 1 hour at 12.4 there.
Yeah. Council members, I'm going to throw this out. Again, it's beginning to seem to me that we can get pretty close to where we all want to be and help continue the financial viability of this project. Maybe we do just go ahead and accept the findings of the Planning Commission. What are your thoughts?
I've got another question to follow up on Councilman Legero's question on the elevation. Is the building going to look exactly as it was originally presented to the council with the same materials, the same roofing, same gutter lines? It's just going to be a gutted building for a warehouse? Is it still going to look the same? Or is it going to change the building in some form?
It is an elevation change at the front of the building. Before it was 10 by 10 units, floor to ceiling. It was like really nice, super nice storage. So now the open floor concept, it just makes more sense to enhance project viability or the building viability, just for value's sake. So at least we break even on the cost of building that building, that Taj Mahal storage. So it's one of those street front retail roll-up looking doors that you see, like, glass, like the real nice ones. They're $6,000-$7,000. It's the ones that you see like downtown Sacramento in those restaurants. Again, this is more or less setting a different tone for Main Street. There's storage all over downtown Escalon. This is just going to be the nicest thing you're ever going to see down there. I think it's in line with the use that you have there in that city. This is just, again, a much nicer version of all of that. And it is at the entrance in the downtown. And it also matches the front of the Main Street office elevation. So it's the same. We're either going to go, I think that, what is it, a bronze? It's a bronze thermal pane, but I know, but the trim itself. So yeah, so anyway, they're going to match. So what's going to happen is when you're looking at that Main Street off to the left, it's going to match. It's going to have a very kind of retail look to it. Classy look. Kind of classy retail look to it right there on Main. So hooked up.
Hey, council members, do we have any other questions for Mr. Lear or Mr. Petrolakis before we close the public hearing?
Well, I guess the question I have is, what kind of a time frame are we looking at?
Mr. Lear?
Is this going to be finished in my life?
Okay, so Ed, I think okay, I'll hit on a little bit and then let George finish it. But
well, let me do this. Here's my view of it. I'm new to this process. it's a complicated project. I'm a relatively intelligent guy, but it's hard to get your head around. So I know the answer is as soon as possible, right? Because the staff has been great in terms of the building permit for Building A is ready to go. We're kind of waiting for the decision on this, tonight, so we can get going. Because I think once Mr. Lear just gets going, I think a lot of the frustration that I'm reading on both parties, right? I mean, the city's been waiting for years to get rid of those ugly, decrepit buildings. You want something nice. Mr. Lear wants to deliver something nice. There have been a lot of issues that have percolated up, and my view is, I guess people can spend a lot of time talking about those or just how to move it forward. And I appreciate the discussion tonight because I think with this approval, he's ready to get going. And then we talked a little bit about it and the time frame. He's gonna, because of the delays, his goal is to move up the original phasing, that was an issue of what he was going to do each of the buildings. I mean, he's going to move through this as quickly as he can now because, it's not like he makes money by waiting around, you know what I mean? So, yeah, right. I mean, it's the opposite. So I think that I know there's been, from my view and trying to get up to speed on it, I think that's the answer. If David wants to add anything, he can. But I know we were waiting for this tonight to see, and I'm kind of busily going through everything to see if there's anything else because, as you'll hear in the two agenda items from now. I mean, it's just, I think that we should, to the extent or remaining issues, we should do this once and we should wrap them up. And I mean, I don't want to be around a long time. I just want to help everyone package this thing up for success so we can get past the lag here and set it up for success. So I don't know if there's anything else other than as soon as possible.
Okay,
Yeah.
listen, that's not really what I was looking for in terms of an answer. Let me ask you this. If tonight we get past this part of it and we give you the permission to move forward, technically your permits are due. When do you plan on pulling your permits?
Well, that depends because the status to me is a little unclear. I'll give you an example on the building permit for Building A. I'm not sure. We applied for an extension for that. I think maybe we had one till tonight, although I'm unclear on that, right? But it's for the success of the project. It's really important that permit be extended because otherwise it's going to cause, the normal work you would do to kind of get up to speed, any new codes that apply. And there was a solar issue, I know. So if we get this resolved tonight and that permit's extended, I think it's going to move imminently, right? Yeah. So,
Ed, you know this too. I mean, you're in building, right? So the idea here, because the phasing schedule got just so thrown out, I mean, the whole thing doesn't make any sense anymore. In fact, if you look at the phasing schedule, we're way ahead with the on-off plan improvements because of those stuff. But anyways, yeah, the idea here is to get our framers going and get them into the next building right after Building A, and then get them into the next one and the next one and the next one. So it's
okay.
not.
Let me stop you a minute. Staff, let me ask staff a question. Staff.
Yes.
If this is finished this evening and he's got the opportunity to move forward, what does he owe the city for his permits? How much?
I don't recall what the number is offhand, but the permit for Building A is completed and ready for pickup. So we have indicated the permit costs and how much is owed to issue the permit. I want to say it's around 92, but I don't believe no, I can't remember offhand how much it was.
It was either 125 or 126.
Okay. So
now let's establish this. That's the number. Now I want to hear Mr. Greer tell me how he's going to deal with that, whether or not he's going to argue at that point. So I want to know now where we're at. How do we have a number? We have an idea that he says he can move forward, which he didn't give us any time frame. He just said as quick as he could, which is pretty ambiguous. But And I am in building, and I do appreciate how hard it is to judge a project. But I can tell you this much: I can give you a better estimate than you just gave us. The other thing is, I need to know if we're going to move forward with this. You're going to get your permits pulled and move. If you're going to sit there and after we give you this information, you're going to sit on it and sit on it, I don't want to move forward.
Hey, staff, this is Mark Velasquez. Is Building D part of Phase 1 or Phase 2?
Building D in the original contract is a part of Phase 1 at this time.
So currently it's supposed to be part of Phase 1 and completed in Phase 1.
Yes, and the reason that it was set up that way was so that that building would be available to people as the developments are getting done, that they'd be able to move into them at that time. But we have had to go ahead.
So the timing for this Building D that we're discussing right now in the storage and is all for Phase 1 timing.
According to that agreement, yes.
And is that part of the permits for Phase 1, or just Building A is ready for permits?
Building A is ready for permits. The building D has been on the standstill pending this item.
Dominique, will Building D therefore become part of Phase 1? If we accept the Planning Commission recommendations, what phase will Building D be in?
I mean, currently it's supposed to be a part of Phase 1, but I mean, as you can see with the time frame, we're out of that time frame. So I mean, I think that could be something that council rediscusses in the next item, maybe. I don't know if legal counsel wants to chime in on that, but that's what it was in the current agreement. But if that council has the authority to make that change in that item, if they want to that amendment.
Okay. Well, I mean, time's definitely of the essence. Okay, on this one. Are there any further questions before I close the public hearing?
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm not done yet. Hey, I want to know: is your infrastructure in place yet, David? Have you done your infrastructure? Your sewer, your water?
Ed, the map could not have been recorded had we not completed all of the on-off site improvements, which have been inspected by your city civil engineer, your city building official. There's, whether or not you guys recognize it, there's over $500,000 into that development right now that we're sitting on. It is done. So
okay.
we just got our final map.
Okay, having said that, now that your infrastructure is in place, and it's all been approved, and there's nobody's contesting that. So your next thing should be, you should start basically framing up something and starting to build.
Yeah, so once you guys approve this storage issue, the appraiser can finish the appraisal. And we have this condition of approval. It's a little bit ambiguous because of what Dominique just said. So we're trying to figure out, like if this is an issue for the loan as well, I guess. But I mean,
for me, David, here's the bottom line. I don't want tonight, when tonight's finished, I want to know that you're going to get on that job and move on it. You're going to pull your permits and move forward. If that's not going to happen, I don't think we should go forward, because I've had enough of this, and I think it's time we get into this somehow and lock it in, and we have sort of a reasonable time frame that we all can live with, and this thing moves forward. I know you're supposedly trying hard, and I get all that. I get it 100%. But from my perspective, it's taken too long. It's been a store on our side, and I'd like to move forward, and I want to do it in a way we can help you, but I don't want any more delays, and I don't want any more excuses.
This is George again. I mean, at least I'm convinced my client wants to remove that thorn that's been a thorn. It's also it hasn't been a bed of daisies for him either, right? And so I think that if there's that level of discomfort, I might say that I think, because I don't want to come into this and try to help fix it, but misrepresent anything to the council that then Mr. Lear is going to be beat up for. So I think I would prefer if we could just continue this for a little bit of time to make sure that what we're representing to you is correct and can in fact be done, because I think we hear you loud and clear. And I think the goal is to do that, but the appraisal, I guess we could have the appraiser look at it as if the planning commission recommendation was done. So we actually know the impact of that. So if it doesn't work or there's something else, it's not like we're going to be, I don't want to be accused of misrepresenting something here to get this relief and then we couldn't perform and we're asking for something else. I know it might not be, well, I think it should be everybody's first choice. I think everyone should just roll up their sleeves and get this thing done in a 45 or 60-day time frame. So the council's really clear on what they're getting, the thorns out of everybody's side. And I know he expressed to me the other day when we were talking about it, I'm going to forget the buildings, but I think it's building A and building B that are on your streetscape. So that would be building A, the little house too, but the building A is on the street. Building B has the commercial office on the street. I know he wants to get those done because then he can move his office. And then the streetscape part of the concern that you've had this eyesore there can get resolved, and then the rest of it should flow nicely. But I kind of talked myself out of a council action, which I don't normally do. But I think it just sounds like me hearing the discussion tonight, my first time hearing everybody. It's just better that we be right rather than we think we're right and then we're wrong about something, and we have to come back, hat in hand because we were wrong about something. I'd like to come up with a comprehensive package so everything's addressed.
Right.
So
Mr. Petrolog, thank you very much. And that's why I'm saying it sounds like the planning department recommendations are going to help send this forward. Can I make that assumption at this point?
On whose behalf?
Yes, it will. Right. It will, but some of the other questions we're getting, I don't know the implications of everything because, it does have to go to the appraiser. We have to make sure we get the construction loan, and if it doesn't appraise, we're back to square one. So it might be, what I'm saying is, it might be better for us to take that recommendation and can the appraiser do that, David? Can they look at it as if it had been, and then we'll know, right? And then that would affect potentially the timing of things because we don't want to deliver a pig in the poke. We want to get to real answers here that can make everybody,
enjoy this project in a reasonable timeline.
Right. You work something out with them, and it is dangerously close to item number 7, which is also pretty close to item number 6. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, like I say, this sounds like a good compromise. But the bottom line, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Mel. We really got to get moving on this. It's and if this would help in that endeavor, then I would supporting the recommendations. Any further questions before I take this back to council?
I just one last comment, Robert. George, I don't feel like I'm trying to beat up on your client. I'm just to the point where I need definitions, defined where there's no loopholes, no back doors, no nothing. If we do move forward eventually with this thing, I want it in concrete.
Well, I don't want any concrete shoes, but if we just keep the agreement in concrete, that might be okay. Yeah, and I hear you loud and clear, and I think that is that's what I'm hoping to help arrange here. But again, this might not be the last time you hear from us, I guess is what I'm saying. But we got a checklist. I got the punch list. We're moving through it as quick as we can, and there's no, there's, and again, we're always, from Mr. Lear's perspective, he's had a lot of things that have happened to the project that have been frustrating, and they've cost time and money on his end, which really comes right out of his hide, right? So it's, but determined, the family's determined to deliver the project, and I think it'll, based on all the other work they've done in the region, that's one of the reasons why I'm here is that they do such good work, and this is really complicated, but they can, they can pull it off. But we hear you loud and clear.
All right, well, thank you. I'd like to pull this back, like to close the public hearing, put this back to council. Public hearing is closed. Council members, what are your thoughts and what direction are we going to be going in with a motion, please?
Well, wait. Are we in closed session now?
No, we're not.
Okay,
There's a
thank
public
you.
hearing. I just closed the public hearing.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to
There is no
clarify.
closed
Thank you.
session. All right? No,
Okay.
nope, no closed session.
Go ahead, Mark. What do you got?
No, I just wanted I was just making sure I heard correctly. I wasn't.
Yes. Just
Well,
close the public hearing. It's all we did and brought it back to council for
Right.
action.
It's my understanding they're willing to wait a longer so they can come back to us with more accurate information and then proceed from that point. At this point, they're not prepared based on the questions I was asking. They know what I'm looking for and as a council member, and they're not ready to deliver that. And I understand that. And I appreciate the fact that they did stop at that point, because here's the deal. We would have gotten through this, past it, and then they would have said, well, we can't do this right away. We can't do that right away. And we'd right back where we are now. So at least we didn't give up anything until they were in a position to deliver something. And I think that was my whole premise of the argument and discussion I had with these guys.
However, do they need a direction tonight regarding the storage building? I assume that's the whole purpose of this exercise.
I believe this set still. I think it gets tabled. I don't think anything happens because they're going to be able to deliver it. That's why they pulled off of it. They backed off because of the questions I was asking, which is what I want proof they're going to do something. And they can't deliver that proof right now. So there's no reason for us to give anything.
Okay. Does that sound accurate to everybody else in, or
maybe staff has a different perspective.
This is Mark Velasquez again. I guess I want to clarify actually my last thought. Everybody can still hear what's being said currently.
Yes, and by the way,
Mr. Lear and his attorney can hear everything. We're not in a closed session, so I just want to remind all the council members that they can hear everything we're saying right now, which
all right.
We're still in an open session.
And to be honest with you, if we needed to call Mr. Lee or Mr. Petrolakis back, for another question, we've done that plenty of times. So no, there's nothing closed about this.
He's not suggesting that. He's suggesting they're listening.
Right.
I'm suggesting just for the council members to think about their comments because it is on the record and they're listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Well, I personally would move the table until they get back to us with more of what they feel comfortable with giving us in terms of answers and how much they're going to proceed with and stuff like that.
Can we confirm with Mr. Petrolakis that is what his proposal is tonight, is to table this and bring this back on the agenda at another meeting?
And Mr. Petrolakis, are you still there?
I am. I think that I'll rely on your city attorneys. I can't remember what the particular implication of the table is. So I think it'd be better from my perspective maybe if it was continued to a date certain, that was, some ways out, so everyone had a kind of a deadline to work with as opposed to not having that deadline. But basic concept, yes, is fine.
Okay.
So wait, would that mean, so it was my understanding that the whole purpose of this application was to allow the project to go forward, in that if the council upheld the planning commission's recommendation, it would assist Mr. Lear in getting financing. Is that correct or not?
He said that his people could probably do it without. In the comments we had with him, he mentioned to us that they felt they might move forward on their appraisal without this.
So why are we doing this exercise?
He needs this to do an appraisal, so then he can go get a loan to do the rest of the work. So Ann is correctly right. Delaying this delays the entire project, delays his ability to get funding for this project. I'm not sure why they're asking for additional time, except as they've been doing, which is to delay this project for whatever reason. But this, by their own words tonight, needed to get done for their appraisal, i.e. their loan. So I don't know why this should get continued to some further date, because we're essentially then just tabling this entire project for some time in the future.
I guess I've got a
It
question.
should be done.
Mr. Petrolakis, Mr. Lear, Mr. Velasquez's, does that sound accurate, his description, that you do need a decision tonight, preferably?
Well, we have the assumption stated that the approval of the Planning Commission recommendation should make the appraisal come in better, which should make the financing work. But, you know, not being 100% sure of that, that's where I get a little, my sensitivity comes from, because, you know, I don't want to misrepresent things, you know. So that's all that was about. I mean, it's not
Accurate to say that approval of the Planning Commission's recommendation would make it more likely that the appraisal would come in such a way that would allow him to get financing and pay for his building permit and get started on construction?
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the assumption we're operating under. No guarantee.
Well, I mean, 100%. 100%. If I can get this recommendation the Planning Commission put on the table, 100%. Yeah, that absolutely helps. It helps me to clean up. It helps me to finish the CC&R. I haven't been able to finish those. Those still got to go to the state of California. So, I mean, it's 170 pages or whatever. I can't even finish that. So it helps me in a lot of ways. It helps me to finally lock down these bids on the project. Now I know what the scope of work is. I still don't even know what that is in some small areas. And every time we update a bid, and then we got to push it out, like in this case, another 6 weeks to get to this, like today. You know, like my dad, contractor of record, he's sitting right here. He's been the project the whole. Been on site throughout the whole project. You know, the subs get frustrated, and then we're in the middle of a weird pandemic, and they shut things down, and then open things back up, and you get weird materials here and there, whatever. So yeah, this is all an issue. So moving things forward one step at a time, and 100% this helps. So I would like to move forward. I think what we're speaking to, there's some ambiguity. You know, anyway. So yeah, it helps to move forward. I mean, it helps me. It helps me finalize some things in my head and how I can move forward from here.
Right.
You know, get our bids updated again. You know, the appraisers on standby waiting, because it's like, what number do we put into that storage, or if anything at all. And if we can put this thing to bed, yeah, that's help.
Right. Council members, I really think we need to make a decision tonight in terms of what option we're going to go. And I would suggest going by the recommendations of the Planning Commission.
So, Mayor, just to make sure that the council understands, the recommendation of the Planning Commission is that the building D would be modified to the open space, and then the tenants would be allowed the caged storage, for lack of better words. I should say fenced storage.
Right.
I agree with Mayor Swift. We need to make action happen on this tonight, one way or the other. Delaying 2 weeks isn't going to change anything in our minds, I don't believe, and it's just going to delay this project.
Let me ask you guys, what are we getting out of this by approving it tonight, other than the fact that supposedly it's going to help them move forward? You have no defined timelines. I mean, the building permit's going to be not pulled for probably a month, if that soon, because it's going to take that long to get the financing or longer.
I think what this does, yeah, I think that what this does by approving this tonight, it eases the situation, as Mr. Petrolakis, Mr. Lear said. You know, it's very close to what we want out of this deal. If it gets that appraisal done, they move ahead with financing. Okay, then essentially the ball is in their court. And what I'm trying to do is try and avoid the ball being in our court and being any kind of a delay with this situation. I think this is close enough to where we need to be. Now, we do have a motion on the table, a lay on the table motion, but there is not a second on it. And we can still go to a different motion or continue on with that one. I do not believe a lay on the table motion is debatable though, if I remember correctly. Maybe Mark, you can help me out on that.
Oh,
But
I'm
Go ahead, Ann.
sorry, you asked about the motion?
Well, we have a lay on the table motion right now, okay? We do not
Who
have
made
another
the motion?
motion. We do not have a second on. Another council member can make another motion if they wish. Therefore,
Okay.
at the moment,
Who made the motion, Mayor?
you did.
What was my motion?
To lay the matter on the table.
That's right. If that's my motion, yes.
There
Maybe
could
second.
be another motion. It hasn't been seconded, so there could be another motion, but if that was your question.
Right.
You're asking if there's a second. No second, then we
There's
can
not a
move on.
second. No. So, I mean, Dave, Councilmember Bellinger, if you support the going to the Planning Commission's recommendation, put that in the form of a motion, or if anybody wants something else, we're still open to make an actual motion now. I'm just saying what's on the table.
If that's the case, I'll make a recommendation and a motion to move on staff's recommendation as it's stated in the paperwork that we see in front of us here with the updated standards for Building D.
The Planning Commission recommendation.
Yeah.
So now
So
we
it
have
would
two
be-
motions on the table with no second.
I would second that.
Which motion, Councilmember Merkin?
Council Bellinger's.
Okay, so we go with that motion. Motion's been moved and seconded to accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Is there any discussion on the motion on the table?
I have a question. So the conversation went back and forth about timelines and conditions and trying to make sure that if this were approved, if we approved Planning Commission's recommendation, what type of time frame would we see action taken on the builder's part? Can this be conditioned? Can approval of this carry with it also some time frames? Or are we?
I would agree.
Or do we have to look at this as separate issues?
This is Mark. Sorry, Ann, go ahead.
Well, I mean, what we're doing here is we're amending an ordinance. So you can't really put, I mean, it doesn't fit. So you can't like say that the ordinance will be amended subject to their, pulling their building permit by X date.
Right.
So what? In addition, I wouldn't want there's already other dates that are in the works or have passed, and I wouldn't want council amending those dates without knowing the ramifications of that. There is so I'm with Ann here that there shouldn't be any conditioned. The council's concerns regarding dates is addressed in the fact of our agreements that have already been entered into and breached, and that will be addressed as they come up, but not for tonight. Not for tonight.
Okay, so those issues are addressed elsewhere. Here we're just talking about this modification to the plan. I agree with that. The fact that we have the ability to enforce those agreements in other arenas other than this particular area. And I think moving forward on Planning Commission's recommendation is the right thing to do. I would support Councilmember Bellinger's motion. The only issue I have is that change in elevation. I'm not quite sold on having a roll-up door facing Main Street, but that being said, I'd support the motion.
Is there any further debate on the motion on the table?
I agree with Jeff's idea about the roll-up door, and also I don't like the idea of having an open space where you put containers in it. I think if we're going to allow it to be a storage area, then build it out like it is. It's supposed to be a storage area.
Okay, is there any further discussion of the motion on the table? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. We'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Bellinger,
Aye.
Councilmember Legero,
Aye.
Councilmember Merkin,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Alves,
No.
and I will vote aye. Motion passes 4-1. Item number 10. Let's see, is this Tammy or Dominique?
This is mine as well. So the item before you is introducing and waiving the first reading of ordinance number XXX, which is an ordinance of the City Council amending Escalon Municipal Code Section 17.41140, accessory dwelling units. As you may recall, back in 2019, we had updated this ordinance. The state of California has mandated various laws over the last few years to increase the production of affordable housing, and many of those laws are related to accessory dwelling units. We made that amendment last year, and then effective January 1st, 2020, the state had additional laws that went into effect, which made our ordinance invalid. So we did review the amendments required to meet state law, and then presented them to Planning Commission at the May 19th meeting of this year. The Planning Commission discussed those updates and unanimously approved a recommendation to the City Council to adopt the ordinance amending the ADU requirements for the city in compliance with state law. A couple of the key areas that we reviewed with Commission where the city was still able to exercise some local control. The first item was efficiency kitchen counter and cabinet space requirements. State law says that food preparation counter and storage cabinets need to be of reasonable size in relation to the size of the ADU or JADU, which is a junior accessory dwelling unit. But this calls for exercise of discretion, which the state law prohibits. So the current suggestion of city staff was to quantify minimum counter and cabinet space up front, suggesting 15 feet for food preparation counters, counter or counters, and 30 feet for food storage cabinet shelf space, which is approximately 7 linear feet of a standard depth counter with 2 levels of shelves of the same area each. The second area was no separate conveyance. Cities have the option of creating a very limited exception to this, allowing separate conveyance in special circumstances involving a nonprofit and long-term affordability restrictions pursuant to government code. The current draft of the ordinance does not include this exception. It can be changed in the future if we needed to make that exception by another ordinance amendment, but at this time we didn't write it into the ordinance amendment. Number 3 was in regards to deed restriction. The cities have the option of changing this in special circumstances involving a nonprofit and long-term affordability restrictions as described in number 2 above. The current draft ordinance also does not include this exception. Also one of those areas where we think it would be very rare that this would occur, but in the haps that it needed to, we could make that amendment to the ordinance at that time. Number 4, regarding lot coverage and open space percentages, 65% is being recommended for lot coverage because it is consistent with the maximum lot coverage requirement in the Escalon Municipal Code for R1, which is low density residential. 50% is recommended for open space because it leaves a reasonable amount of the lot for open space. Number 5 is in regards to rear yard setback area and impervious surfaces. 50% is proposed for the rear yard setback area because it leaves a reasonable amount of the rear yard area open, and 60% is proposed for the impervious surfaces, which takes into consideration the entire lot. The last one that we have is utility fees. Cities do not have to require this, as they may allow an ADU to connect to and through the primary dwelling. However, staff recommends it because it is appropriate to have each unit provide their own separate gas, electric, water, and sewer connection. So in the In the future, if someone was to propose a detached ADU, the city has it written into the ordinance that we would require them to provide their own separate gas, electric, water, and sewer connection. Therefore, we do recommend that council introduce and waive the first reading of this ordinance, amending section 17.41140, specific to accessory dwelling units, conduct the public hearing, and then consider Planning Commission's recommendation to adopt the ordinance amendments.
Okay, are there any open
comments? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to mention in attachment A, which is the draft ordinance, I've gone through in yellow and highlighted the areas that are mentioned in the staff report for discussion. So on page 2 of attachment A, it talks about the food preparation counters and the food storage cabinet sizing. And I did discuss that with our building official and inspector, and those are adequate sizing for those areas. When you're moving through attachment A on page 4, under the general ADU and JADU requirements, number 4 talks about no separate conveyance. An ADU or a JADU may be rented, but no ADU may be sold or otherwise conveyed separately from the lot and the primary dwelling in the case of single family lot, or from the lot and all of the dwellings in the case of multifamily. If you move on to page 5 regarding deed restrictions, it's highlighted that the ADU may not be sold separately from the primary dwelling. These are items as indicated in the staff report that have a very limited exception, which is allowing those conveyances in special circumstances involving a nonprofit and long-term affordability restrictions, which are the only ones that staff, at staff level would recommend or be open to at this time. If you move through the draft onto page 6 regarding the lot coverage, the minimum open space, we tried to make those as consistent with what our current restrictions are, in accordance with the municipal code as best we could, the 65% for lot coverage, a minimum open space of the 50%, and then a rear yard setback area and the impervious surfaces section are all at, may cover more than 50% of the rear yard setback area. And then if you move to page 9 regarding utilities, that section talks about requiring a new and separate utility connection directly between the ADU or JADU and the utility. The connection is subject to a connection fee or capacity charge that is proportionate to the burden created by the ADU based on either the floor area or the number of drainage fixture units values as defined by the Uniform Plumbing Code upon the water or sewer system. The fee or charge may not exceed the reasonable cost of providing this service. So we will need to move forward with establishing some type of fee for it. The current state law also has updated cities' abilities to charge development impact fees for water and sewer service on ADUs. So we are no longer allowed to do that except for in accordance with this section, which is subject to a connection fee or capacity charge proportionate to the burden. So it is something we'll need to create a calculation for, and we'll be working on that next. If you have any other questions regarding the ordinance, we are basically bringing it into state law compliance, which is required. The items mentioned are the items left that the city can maintain some control with. And as usual, if we had issues with those items, we would either bring them back to Planning Commission and Council to address, or we would refer back to state law. And of course, if there was a discrepancy, state law would win. So we would end up following exactly what state code has. In the situation where maybe something doesn't meet our code requirement, we would have to refer back to the state law to figure it out.
Okay, very good. Any opening questions from the council before I open up the public hearing?
Yeah, Dominique, it's my understanding on these units, they cannot be contested. Is that correct?
No, they cannot. As long as they meet these requirements, which these are the requirements by state law. So if you're looking in the best area to look at for a better idea is, let's see, under page 2, under approvals, they need the building permit, and then they give you specific requirements for either a detached or a attached ADU. And if they meet those requirements, they need to be permitted, period. Yeah.
And the properties will be reappraised after that?
They will get submitted over to the county. And so, yes, the county would get that information from that permit, and then they would reassess the property whenever they find appropriate, which I would think would be sooner than later because it is an actual permanent structure.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to open up the public hearing. And is there anybody from the public that has any questions or comments regarding this subject? Regardless of whether you're on the phone or if you're at this go-to meeting. If not, I will bring this back to council for action, and I will therefore close the public hearing. Okay. So,
move on staff.
bring it back. What are your thoughts?
Move on staff recommendation.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded to move on staff's recommendation. Is there any discussion of the motion on the table? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. We'll do a roll call vote again. Councilmember Bellinger.
Aye.
Councilmember Leggero.
Aye.
Councilmember Merkin.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Alves.
No.
And I will vote aye. Motion passes 4-1. Item number 11. And let's see, Tammy or Dominique?
Dominique.
This is also my item, yes.
Okay.
So this item was continued from a few of the last meetings, so I'm just going to reread it since it's been a while. This is to consider an appeal filed by Lear Properties LLC related to the executed agreement between the City of Escalon and Lear Properties for development phasing, fee deferral, and inclusionary housing of the Lear Village project located at Main Street and Coley Avenue. Back in 2018, council reviewed and approved an agreement between the City of Escalon and Lear Properties for development phasing, fee deferral, and inclusionary housing, among other items, approved an order for the project to move forward. The phasing agreement sets the 3 construction phases as listed below, and so we go through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. The phasing agreement also provided financial incentives in which $50,000 of the city's development impact fees could be deferred to the next phase, pending completion of each phase by the timelines indicated above. This amount included the city's inclusionary housing in lieu fee of $17,288, which totaled $67,188. If all deadlines were met throughout the project, the deferred fees would have been payable before final inspection of phase 3. According to the phasing schedule, phase 1 was to be completed by February 28th, 2019. Phase 2 by August 28th of 2020, and phase 3 by February 28th of 2022. Lear Properties had filed an appeal back in February of 2019, requesting that City Council approve an extension of the phase 1 timeline, which would specifically extend phase 1 8 months in exchange for shortening phase 2 timeline by 8 months. Lear Properties advised that this was being requested to provide the necessary time to underground utilities for both phases. At the same time, it would not have directly affected the completion timeline of the project as a whole. Upon review of the request and discussion of the project, the council did not approve that extension request. In May of 2020, Lear Properties was moved to a cash-only account due to more than 2 returned ACH payments for liquidated damages as insufficient funds, as well as a returned ACH for the month of May, where Lear Properties revoked the payment. May's payment, in accordance with the phasing agreement between the city and Lear Properties, remains unpaid to date, as well as the payments for June and July. There's currently an unpaid balance of $10,500 on the account. Mr. Lear advised at the time that he would be requesting termination of the liquidated damages provision of the phasing agreement. Section 3 of the phasing agreement provides that an adjustment of liquidated damages may only be granted through an appeal to the City Council. A separate appeal fee, as adopted by current resolution, will apply to any and all appeals. Mr. Lear submitted his appeal on April 23rd, 2020, which is attached, and paid the appeal fee on May 22nd of 2020. Termination of liquidated damages is entirely within the discretion of the City Council. The Council is not required to waive liquidated damages due to the current COVID-19 pandemic unless delay is caused by the pandemic. Should the Council direct any amendment to the liquidated damages provision of the phasing agreement, the amended agreement will be executed by the City Manager and recorded against the properties. This appeal has been presented to the City Council at a previous meeting, but was continued at request of Mr. Lear after advising staff of his interest in revising the request. A revised appeal letter was not submitted to staff by the deadline provided to Mr. Lear, which is established by staff in order to complete the processing of the agenda and reports and have them posted 72 hours prior to the council meeting in accordance with the Ralph M. Brown Act. Mr. Lear submitted a request for a building permit application extension on Building A, which is the former PD building or police department building, based in part on final approval of Building D, which is the storage building. However, since this correspondence was received, Mr. Lear submitted the revised plans completing the submittal for Building A, and the plan check and permit was completed. Staff has provided notification to Mr. Lear that the permit for Building A is ready to be issued upon payment of the fees. Mr. Lear may still want an extension as the ordinance amendment regarding the condition of approval for storage remains pending. This could potentially affect the approved plans for Building A in terms of attic storage. City staff has advised Mr. Lear that he could simply submit a revision of the permit for Building A if needed in the future. Therefore, an extension on the permit is not necessary. Mr. Lear continually expresses to staff that he disagrees with the fees and argues that the estimated fees that were included as an example in the purchase agreement from 2015 should be the fees he pays. As indicated, these fees were estimates, and the city's fees include an annual inflation increase in the fee study that was approved by the City Council and active at that time. The City Council has since adopted an updated fee study in 2017 as well. The fees for Lear Village vested in October 2017 upon submittal of the vesting tentative subdivision map in accordance with the Subdivision Map Act. And if you have any questions, I can answer them, and Mr. Lear and his attorney are on the line as well.
Okay, and I'll remind the council, this is not a public hearing, it's an administrative matter, and it sounds like we can either accept or reject this appeal. Am I understanding that correctly, legal counsel?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Any opening questions, council members? Go ahead. Okay. This is a motionable item. If somebody would like to put it in the form of a motion, that's fine. If there are no questions, or if there are any questions to Mr. Lear or Mr. Petrolakis, please go ahead.
Mayor Swift, I would like to make note about the extension for Building A. The building permit also should be considered within this motion.
Well, what will the effect of that be? That's where this is George, I'm sorry, that's where I'm confused. Because I don't think that was agenda to address the building permit extension. I expected it to be because that was our conversation, but it's not on the agenda, really.
No, staff report
Again,
says that there's no need for it. There is no need for it. Sorry,
well, regardless, I mean,
I was just saying I don't understand the implication of the extension discussion, and so that I'd like to hear more about that.
So Tammy, it's my understanding that the extension would extend the amount of time that staff would be still applying the existing building code.
That's correct.
Right.
And so what date does what is the extension? When does the what is the deadline right now?
So today was the deadline that staff gave for the building permit. And then was leaving the decision to the council whether they extended beyond that.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So if the council does not extend it, then the new building code would apply, and Mr. Lear would have to revise his plans to make it apply to the new building code. So it would not affect the fees that are payable. But it would affect the building code requirements that apply.
I just don't understand that, because I think if everything you stated is accurate and it goes to the current standards of the building code, it will increase the fee. I believe that to be accurate.
It may increase the actual permit fee, but it will not increase the impact fees. And it may increase the value of the project because there would be additional requirements that you would need to meet. So the value of the building may increase due to those improvements that would be included. So that might increase the permit fee, but the development impact fees would remain the same.
Because of the vesting map.
What about the standards of the new standards we have? Are those different than when the map was vested?
Oh, yeah. You mean the building code requirements?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, for example, solar, the whole solar requirement would become applicable, for example.
I would assume fire sprinklers in some form as well. I thought that was one of the new ones.
Battery chargers.
Excuse me, Dominique.
I'm not sure about the sprinkler, but it could be. Dominique probably.
And can you please clarify? I don't think this extension that we're talking about has anything to do with the appeal, which is the subject of the agenda item, correct?
So as indicated in the staff report, the reason it was continued is because David had mentioned that he wanted to submit an updated appeal, and he had indicated to staff that he wanted to include these other items, and he did discuss that he did submit to staff an extension on the building permit, and staff denied the extension. And so he submitted an application and wanted it to go to council to determine whether or not he could get the extension on building A. But after letting us know that that was his intention, he resubmitted plans that were outstanding on the electrical and mechanical and got everything completed on the permit to where it's ready now. So when you typically extend permit extensions or permit applications, you're doing them because you're waiting on plans or updates, and stuff like that. But the permit is ready for pickup now. So we have it ready. He just needs to pay the fee and then it could be issued.
So this whole extension request is null and void because we're ready to go. The permit's ready to go.
Well, he would say that he would like you to extend it because if you don't extend it, it expires today and he'll have to redo the plans that are approved.
Because he hasn't pulled the permit yet.
But this isn't on part of this agenda item, and therefore it's not on the agenda.
No.
Okay. Well, does the city council want to just give direction to the city manager to that she could make that decision?
That might be our out on this. So let's deal with this real quick. Council members, do we have consensus to give the city manager discretion regarding this specific extension?
How big of an time frame?
Yeah. Why would
You can give direction. It's true it's not on the agenda, but you can certainly give direction.
The intention is to allow Mr. Lear to pay his fees for the permit to activate it? Is that all this is for?
Right, that's right.
And how much is
It-
the
it-
cost of this permit? 125 grand? Is that a give or take? Is that the understanding?
Yes.
Well, let's go here. What if he doesn't have the money and he can't pay for it? Then what happens?
Well, then once the extension ends, then he's gonna have to redo all of his plans and resubmit another application, or not.
So let's talk about this extension first, then we'll talk about the appeal. Do we have a consensus to, let's say, do a 30-day extension from July 20th to what, August 20th?
That won't help you, Robert, because he has to acquire funds to pay for it, and he's going to have to get the appraisal done. Which will
You know, Councilman, with all due respect, whether he can pay for it or not isn't the issue here. He can pay for it. That's not the issue. The issue was, you know, while I had some of this information, some of it was unclear. We were waiting to get the council direction tonight on the previous item, and so it's just not true that, like, you know, and it really does harm to
You're
his,
saying you can pay for it? Is you're
I'm saying he can't pay for things.
okay, then. Let's
the
good enough.
direction
I move
Hey,
that we
that'll be out. You know, we can move forward on this matter instead of keep on, you know, kind of retreading the same negative ground.
Do we have a consensus to give him an extension? And would somebody like to suggest, I'm suggesting 30 days.
I'm not.
Do we have a consensus to allow the city manager to do that?
What kind of extension is he asking for?
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Well,
It wasn't
that's a
a
good. Is Mr. Lear still on the line?
Yeah, it's just an extension of the current permit that's ready to go, so that we got the indication tonight on, you know, the previous item on the storage, which really helped. And
Right.
so now, you know, he's going to have to move forward with the building permit, because he may have to do it at risk, right? Even without, you know, financing in place or something, just because we can't keep on moving backwards, because if we have to redo the building permit, that costs more time and money. It adds new standards that will make the project more expensive. So we'd be going negative, you know, that we would be going in the wrong direction. So it's just a current permit that you heard from your staff that he put in the final plans. They were all approved and the permit's ready to go. So that's all we're talking about.
That's all we're talking about.
That's correct. But what kind of time frame is it that he's requesting then now for that permit to pull?
Come in, pay the fees, and pull the permit. How much time does he need to do that now?
Well, the 30 days suggested by one of the council members would make it comfortable, because then we can move down the line on you know, seeing if we have the construction financing, right? So ideally, that little cushion would help, opposed to like 5 days where he clearly would have to pay for a permit at risk, right, of not having the final answer on the appraisal. So, you know, I'm not going to ask for more than that. I thought that was a good suggestion by the council member. So I don't have much more to say on that.
Well, if he doesn't,
that, you know.
if he doesn't have the money and pull the
depends on
permit in 30 days, we will be back here. You will be asking for the exact same thing again.
Exactly.
Well, but he'd have to do a new permit that he has a high incentive not to do.
He's had a high incentive. The whole point of there was incentives and penalties. What's being asked by Mr. Lear today was a waiver of a penalty. That was one of the things that was meant to drive him to complete this project on time.
Thank you.
So let's not ignore the past history, which is what you actually want us to do. But the penalty.
No, believe me, I'm
is asking,
happy to go into great detail on the past history. I just don't think it's particularly useful, because I think each side has kind of a different view of it, and each side, and that's why it was great. Your staff gave me a great briefing where I started to understand the city point of view. So I'm just saying, I think it's better to deal with positive things that move things forward instead of spending a lot of time on other things. You know, so yeah, but I don't know.
with all due respect, you were just
a
hired.
problem with it.
2 weeks ago. This council's been dealing with this for years.
I
don't
understand
see
that,
how
and I
very-
understand clearly. I think there's and listen, I've been dealing with it for a very small amount of time, and I'm deeply frustrated. So I can't imagine what it's like for the people who have lived it. Okay, so I understand that. I'm trying to do my best to focus on, moving the thing forward. So obviously, one thing that would help that, and is just the suggested extension period. And you're right. But in the end, you're right. If we don't have the money and we can't come up with the money, well then that building permit is dead, and he has to start all over, right? And then you, the council, will make that'll affect your view of things and all of that. But at some point, we have to try to do the best we can to focus on some steps that'll move us forward.
Right. And I do apologize, Mr. Petrologis, that the history does matter, because that's what we've been dealing with, as well as the community in dealing with this. And that's why we're trying to do everything we can on our end to make sure that, okay, the ball's in your court. And that's why I'm suggesting the 30 days. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a consensus on this. Is there a consensus on this or not?
I guess I have one question here, Robert, real quick, just so I understand fully for everything. So right now we've got a permit ready to go and needs to be paid for. If in fact, when 30 days hits, if it is not paid, then the 2017 building codes are thrown out the window and has to be brought current. New plans are brought to us and everything starts over. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the way that works? Okay. Just wanted to clarify for myself.
I would recommend we give them to the next meeting, not 30 days.
Okay, till August
3rd.
3rd? Okay, that'll work. Do we have consensus on that?
That would be my need a motion.
Well, we can't, the problem is that we can't, unless we agendize this particular this extension.
They're just giving direction to me.
Consensus.
I just recommend you give the city manager direction on what you think.
Yeah, because I'm not too sure if we're gonna be close to being able to agendize this.
We have a lot of issues.
Do we have a consensus to go give them extension till Monday, August 3rd? Councilmember Bellinger.
No, I think we need 30 days. I think I don't want to have to come back to this in 15 days. 30 days, be done with it. Hard line. That's my opinion.
I disagree.
Well, here's the thing. I think this is going to be a one-shot deal. It's going to be a one-shot deal.
That's what I'm saying.
Guys,
and again, I'm probably talking when I should be listening. This is George again, but if I'm okay with the one-shot deal, but again, I just want to be clear. It's the 30 days is a time frame that will work. I don't think the next council meeting, because you really want to get the construction loan in place to, pay that fee amount too. So I just think that if it's a one-shot deal, I would ask for the 30 days, and then, if we're not able to perform, then, fine, it moves on to a different plane. But the next council meeting date, I think, is sort of setting it up for additional conflict and a lack of success.
Unbelievable.
Okay, so Mayor Swift, what if we said the second meeting of August, which is August 17th? It's just shy of the 20 days.
Well, let's do that. It doesn't matter to me. Like I say, it's basically a situation. Okay, fine. Ball's in your court. You take it and run with it. And if you don't, that tells us, either way, we're gonna know. August 17th, is that a consensus? Councilmember Bellinger.
Yes.
Councilmember Legero.
Yes.
Councilmember Merkin.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Alves.
No.
Okay, and I'm gonna say yeah. And or Mark, brush me up on a little bit of Parley Pro. You got a 4-to-1 consensus. Is that close enough? No.
Sure, absolutely.
Now that's this issue, okay? To extend.
Right.
Now, the issue that's on the issue that's on the table is the appeal. Okay.
That's right.
And again, Dominique explained everything that we had to deal with appeal. What are your thoughts, council members, on either rejecting or accepting the appeal?
I'd reject.
I'd reject.
Okay,
I
I
would
do
reject.
I need in the form of a motion if we look like we're this clear cut, I will need it in the form of a motion.
Do we need a motion to reject it?
Yes.
Yes,
Well,
to deny the appeal
yeah.
or reject.
I'd move to deny the appeal.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to deny the appeal filed by Lear Properties LLC related to an executive agreement between the City of Escalon and Lear Properties for development phasing, fee deferral, and inclusionary housing of the Lear Village project located at Main Street and Foley Avenue. Is there any discussion of the item on the table? Okay.
What's our process for getting the back fees caught up?
Good question.
Oh, God.
Good question. Tammy, you know the answer to that question?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Are we going to vote?
Yes, we are going to vote. We have a motion on the table. It's been moved and seconded. And frankly, I think it's a very wise decision. So seeing no further discussion on the table, we'll proceed to a voice vote, up to a roll call vote. Let's go with Councilmember Bellinger.
Aye.
Councilmember Legero.
Aye.
Councilmember Merkin.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Alves.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Motion to reject the appeal passes 5-0. Council communications. Councilmember Bellinger.
I think I'm good for the evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Legero.
I'm good, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Merkin.
Just a question that's come up a couple of months ago. Has anybody gotten with Caltrans about the wear and tear already on Highway 120? I haven't got an answer.
Anybody? I don't know if Justin's still here.
I'm not sure if Justin's still on the line, and I apologize, Councilmember Merkin. I'll follow up with him again tomorrow.
Thank you. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Alves.
I'm good.
Okay. And again, I'd like to just congratulate Chief Lackey, Sergeant Hargraves, and Officers Cruz and Halverson for being with their new positions on the force. Continuity is important in this town. I think they're all going to do an excellent job. And on that note, I'd like to thank everybody who was able to attend the meeting tonight. Have a good evening, and I declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.